the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Clinton Yates joins us for one more segment. Of course, ESPN. You can watch him on Around the Horn, listen to ESPN Daily, etc., etc. You, sir, have intaken quite a bit of college football this year, gone around doing some of the Heisman House stuff. You actually watch it. You got to see Caleb Williams out there as you're in LA. We should probably talk about that in a moment. But let's start off with the playoff. Michigan beats Alabama, and then Michael Penix puts on a show for Washington. Championship game, obviously, on Monday. Any strong lean either way on how that one goes?
Rooting for Washington, like Washington, think Washington will win. That team has at minimum 2 guys as receivers that are going to play on Sundays, 2 of them who might even go in the first round. Are you listening, Commanders? And I just sort of feel like they are a better football team. I know Michigan's been ranked number 1. I understand all that. But when I look at the pieces that they put together, the Huskies, they've been good like this for 2 years now. I just think they're a little bit more special of an offense and how they run things. Don't necessarily I don't have a problem with Michigan being there. I'm not one of these guys that thinks that, if you're going to vacate the championships, then Jim Harbaugh shouldn't be there. And I don't care about that crap. That doesn't matter to me. I like this Washington team. I think that they are better composed from a balance standpoint. And I like Michael Penix Jr. He's the story of a kid that, not unlike many quarterbacks these days in college, transfers from a big school to another school, gets a Heisman shot, finds himself in the national title. It's amazing how that route has become fortuitous for a lot of guys, Caleb Williams included, and he's really done a great job with it. If those who don't know, Penix is a bit of an injury issue. It's one of the reasons why he's not marked higher on the draft board. Once again, Commanders front office, I'm talking to you, but I still think he has the skill set of anybody that's as good as anybody in this draft that is immediately applicable to the league. That's the key thing for this. A lot of guys, you can say they got potential, but it doesn't seem quite obvious just what they're going to do well at the next level beyond just develop and potentially be better. Michael Penix Jr., I think, could walk into the NFL right now and be a pretty solid starter compared to the rest of the guys that are running teams in the league at this point for non-playoff squads.
Yeah, so he's such an interesting one for me. I always worry about older quarterbacks, not because oh my God, by the time he gets to his second contract, he'll be 28 years old. I don't care.
Right.
Quarterbacks that are good and understand how to stay healthy, which, some of his injury stuff has been bad luck. It's not like he doesn't know how to do it, and he's stayed healthy for the last couple of years. These guys play until their mid-30s. I'm not that concerned about getting 2 contracts worth out of a first-round pick. But it's are you a 23-year-old who's just beating up on 19-year-olds because you're smarter and more developed as a human being?
Sure.
Or did you develop and figure some things out, and you can continue that trajectory to the NFL? And there's been a couple of guys as of late that have proven that don't really worry about the age. And I think Penix could definitely fall into that group. Some of the underlying data for him is awesome. One of the things that I think we worried about with Sam Howell, and we've seen it this year, is his sack to pressure ratio in college was terrible. He took a ton of sacks.
Yes, he
got
got hit
pressure
a lot
all the time. Penix is one of the most ridiculous numbers I've ever seen. He's at 6.8%, where Williams is in the 20s, I think, or high teens, 20s. So some of the stuff that you worry about for guys going pro, Penix doesn't have that, and he's got a crazy quick release. He's accurate, make all the throws. It looks a little funny sometimes, but
but that's only because he's left-handed.
Dude can win from the pocket.
That's the only reason it looks funny.
You know what's great? Did you see the video that was going around of him getting flipped?
He
looks like Lamar. His release looks like Lamar.
So I think, and this, I don't know how old this is, what I said when I was talking about this on ESPN Daily the other day, he reminds me a little bit of a left-handed Randall Cunningham. And that is a little bit of a different, a throwing motion thing. From his left hand, he looks like a left-handed version of the right-handed guy. Anyway, that's not the point. But Kalen DeBoer, his coach, who came with him from Indiana, is a large part of that. I'm not saying you hire away a coordinator from college to take with a quarterback. What I'm saying is that Penix is shown to be a student of the game that has affected his ability to be more than just a 23-year-old beating up on 19-year-olds. That is part of why he was able to go to Washington, the Huskies, that is, and be so effective so quickly, and part of the reason why he was named a captain as a transfer immediately, not just because he was the big guy that was coming in. He came from Indiana. They had other guys. There was supposed to be a competition there. It wasn't. I think that he's got the football IQ that we've seen that sort of I trust. And it's really, really tricky because you do have to make a decision. Do you go with yet another big kid from North Carolina, or do you go with somebody who's got a proven track record but doesn't necessarily have a ton of awards, even though he does have plenty when I'm referring to are Heisman's, if somebody who does is there? It's not an easy choice. I can't decide how hard this choice is compared to the rest of it because, as in the head coach and the general manager, because, it's a player, so it's a little different. But yeah, not an easy pick. I just don't know what the philosophy is going to be on this, and I really hope that Josh Harris does.
Yeah, no, I think that, the good news is they have a lot of options from trading down to taking someone at 2, if that's where they wind up, to, does Penix have a bad national championship game and all of a sudden he's available at 34 when you take at the top of the second?
Sure.
And you steal a guy there. I think there's, you build out the roster. I think it's pretty fascinating. The one guy that everyone does seem to agree is worth it at 1 is Caleb Williams. You have seen him up close and personal out there in LA. He's definitely didn't have the year that I think a lot of people were anticipating based off the Heisman campaign the year before, but he also threw for a ton of yards.
He did.
You see the skill set. What do you make of Caleb Williams?
Honestly, Craig, I don't know. And I don't say this as a knock on the kid. DC kid, Gonzaga kid. I've seen that kid play in a lot of different places, but I don't know because I never, ever loved the system he played in with Lincoln Riley. People talk all the time about how Lincoln Riley is a quarterback whisperer and this, that, and the third. But when these guys get to the pros, it gets a little different if they're not specifically running something that is obviously already proven. Kyler Murray, it took him a while to sort of adjust. Baker Mayfield and all these guys, they could play, but how that quick strike style manifests itself at the pro level for a player who is his best skill might be improvisational ability. You know what I mean? If you were thinking about him, what would you say that he has that is definitely above all the other guys? I don't know that it's arm talent. I don't know that it's speed. I don't even know that it's decision making, but he's just a really good football player playing at quarterback. I'm not sure this team has the direction to take a guy like that and give him the keys to everything. That just seems like putting a lot of eggs in the basket of a young man who, A, as you mentioned, coming off of a down year in college, and B, hometown franchise resurrection savior. That's a big decision for a guy like that when you haven't had a lot of success recently with your quarterbacks. That's what I'm saying. This decision is important for more reasons than football. There's an optics decision there. And that's why I said last week, I think they're going to draft a brother. I actually don't think it's going to be Caleb, though.
Yeah, I think that the hope for Caleb as a player is he undergoes a similar trajectory as Mahomes.
Sure.
Where Mahomes was this otherworldly creator at Texas Tech, and he sits for a year and there's no pressure on him.
Right.
He's not the first pick. He's the 11th pick. He sits a year behind Alex Smith. People are kind of ready for him when he comes, but they're not oh my God, save us, Patrick Mahomes. Because they were already a playoff team, which means there also was some infrastructure around him. That's totally different than what Caleb would be coming into here.
Exactly right. That's the big difference. I just don't know that I believe in the developmental core of this franchise to make Caleb Williams the player that he probably really could be. I think that there are people, and this is the case in a lot of different sports for a lot of different things. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes you want a guy that's more ready to play now, even if the higher ceiling isn't necessarily what you think it is. To me, that's where the Commanders are. You don't necessarily, look, are they a playoff team tomorrow if they get Michael Penix Jr.? No, that's not what I think. But I do think that another project, emotionally, psychologically, and not that Williams is a project. The project of getting him to an NFL level that's going to make your team good and not just have him shining in the stat book. That is a project because we don't know who's going to be involved. There's so many moving parts to this that Josh really is going to have to figure out what is his philosophy going to be. Are you going to just simply pick the best football player that your football guys tell you? Or are you going to say, that's the human that I want, not dissimilar to how, Daniel M. Snyder said, I want Bob. I'm willing to take everything to get him because he's a star. That worked out. Eventually, obviously, had sort of, the denouement and the untangling, but you never know what a guy's going to do until he's in that position. Josh Harris in the spotlight.
Right. And, Bob example is great because the stuff that he did great, shined and was successful for a while, but do you have the infrastructure to continue the growth to eventually build you almost are building the foundation under what is already, a very decorated home, and it's like, yeah, nobody look, that the foundation is crumbling. Right. We have to rebuild it while we're sailing.
We got bags over the windows over here. Don't mind that.
Don't mind that.
The
we're just going to cruise.
Are on the left.
So
yeah.
So it's a complicated decision, and that's why we're going to spend the next 4 months talking about it at DC local radio here on the Hoffman Show. Pew 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 pew. Clinton Yates talking about all kinds of stuff on ESPN Daily. They do a great job taking one topic each day, top story, diving into it with some experts. So check that out daily on your favorite podcast platform. And, of course, Around the Horn on ESPN, and the occasional story, written word style in Anscape, ESPN.
On Papyrus.
Happy
Unroll your papyrus. Happy New Year, Kyrie. Goodbye.
Goodbye.